Hello and welcome back to my channel. Especially those of you who have liked and subscribed to our videos, we greatly appreciate it. And yes, I know you hear from everybody, but yes, it really does help. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about my work in science fiction, as well as the late Mira Furlan, great actress, best known for Lost, but also for Babylon 5 and other small notable appearances. But first, let me give you a little background. You see, I've always been a big science fiction fan. It goes back to early childhood, starting with, my late father. He was a big sci-fi fan. He wouldn't admit it to himself, but he sure as hell was. I mean, one of the first films he saw after returning from the Vietnam War was the Space Odyssey 2001, and he saw that not too far from here in Hollywood, and Cinerama Dome, which is closed now. I'm hoping they'll reopen it at some point. It didn't survive the pandemic, but we'll see. So, my love of science fiction was embedded at a very young age, being exposed to that film. Didn't quite understand it, but such a heavyweight of a film that it stayed with me my whole life. And because of that, I was able to appreciate Frank Herbert's Dune, and of course, Ridley Scott's work with the original 1979 Alien, and there are other notable classics that big influence on my life, such as Blade Runner. In fact, I tend to choose his shot because it makes me think of Blade Runner in a certain way. Love that film, and the sequel wasn't too bad either. But that's another story. So, getting back to what I have felt to do with all this and how this relates to Mira Furlan. You see, when I was doing bulk of my film work was in the mid-1990s, all the way up until the early 2000s. And getting on sci-fi shows was actually pretty hard. It turns out everybody wanted to do sci-fi. And, it just seemed like anytime there was a sci-fi film, it was just like almost impossible to get on. With the exception of Starship Troopers, nobody wanted to work that film. It was the middle of August, and they wanted to shoot this big boot camp scene, and they didn't care what you looked like, so long as you were somewhat fit looking and young looking, and was willing to do a lot of physical training on camera with a bunch of fake plastic armor, and that did not sound like fun to me. I had a friend, my friend Demi, he worked on that, and he said that was murder. So I stuck to film Father's Day when we were filming. I was filming about at the same time. So, but not too much sci-fi opportunities came along. I mean, at the time, there was two main sci-fi shows that were being shot here in Hollywood. There was Deep Space Nine, one of the Star Trek series, and there was also Babylon 5, and both were pretty hard to get on. And just by some odd chance, I got lucky and got hired to work on Deep Space Nine. And I will tell you what happened, because this fucked with my head totally. It's like, okay, wasn't my favorite show. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was more of a Babylon 5 fan, and didn't really care for the Bajorans. I didn't care for the Cardassians. I didn't care for any of the villains on this show. I just thought, God damn, this show sucks. They took some great characters and made a depressing, boring ass show, at least in the beginning. And they did have some notable episodes, of course. And like old Star Trek, there's going to be a lot of cerebral episodes and some filler in there, and then they'll rehash an old theme and strike a gem, And there were a few episodes that were really, really exceptional. But so I get called over to show up at the Paramount lot, and they want me to do a fitting. And so we were over there next to Stage 17, which is the prop department. Now, I'd worked behind the camera prior, so as a art director and set dressers. So I've had many opportunities to, step on Stage 17, which, and the two prop masters who ran the place, actually, they knew me by name because I had this nasty habit, because I grew up on Mel Brooks as well as science fiction, and Mel Brooks in his famous film, the producers, they have this casting call for someone who could play Adolf Hitler, and the big catch line of that film is they find the guy who's least like Hitler, and they say, "That's our Hitler." So every time we see they had this bust of Hitler standing right in the middle of what looked like a garden. They put all these greens around. They were trying to hide the statue, but they kept it around for as a prop. Every time I'd see it, I'd always say, "That's our Hitler." Oh God, there'll always be like a tour guide. I think the last time I did that, when I was working behind the camera, the prop guys, they were, through the side of Burley because they saw I'd enter there, and they're like going, "Oh no, please don't say it, please don't say it." And I wasn't going to say a word, and then this group of nuns walk in with all these school children from a Catholic school, whatever, and at that point, someone else goes, "That's our Hitler." They like, oh, it's like, oh, and they're looking at me like, see what you started? Anyway, so I'm on that set. I'm looking at all the costumes, and lo and behold, they had me standing right next to this clothes rack. Now and normally you'd say, okay, it's a big fucking deal, it's a clothes rack, right? But what's on that clothes rack was something you'll never fucking see. I mean, it was hanging on this clothes rack were racks and racks of tits. I swear, fake tits, all right? But not just any tits, these were Klingon tits. These were made for Klingon women. And I'm going, oh my God, it's a rack of racks. God damn, I wanted to try them on. But then I get the call and say, oh God, is this a bad time? I go, I'm on set. I mean, I'm at the fitting. I said, well, we need you to just take your voucher and go over and sign out. I go, what do you mean sign out? Well, we're cutting you. And I'm going, why are you cutting me? He said, well, I'm sorry, it's political. We were going to have you play Klingon. And I was like, God damn, that's all I ever wanted to do is play Klingon. I love the Klingons, right? And they said, well, I'm sorry, it's political. It's like we have X amount of people that, and certain people are reserved. And essentially what they were trying to tell me is that, people that look like Michael Dorn were the preference for Klingons, I guess, because it was largely a makeup and prosthetic issues. So, okay, I was disappointed. I took my voucher, got signed out, and got my money, and I was like, well, that fucking sucks, Wanted to be on a sci-fi film. Not gonna happen. But lo and behold, I get another call. And it was like, hey, are you willing to wear a mask all day? I said, well, what do you mean? And it's like, well, we got the spot for Narn aliens. I go, whoa, Narn? Did you say Narn? She says, yeah, it's for Babylon 5. Are you familiar with it? Fuck yeah, I'm familiar with the show. Sure, I'll fucking do it. I always wanted to be on that show. Great opportunity as a fan, to do that show. But little did I know, this was going to be the hardest fucking day of work of my life. I'm not kidding you. Whoa. So, before anybody gets your hopes up, I'll just warn you. If you're going to play an alien on one of these shows and you're not a principal actor, you're not sitting in that makeup chair being put appliances, you're going to be put to the fucking ringer. Now, on Babylon 5, because it was kind of a low-budget show that had great effects, they worked your fucking ass off, and I'm not kidding. And it started with, first they put on this really bizarre, heavy makeup to, because it's going to go under the mask. They want to see human eyes, and you're going to see your lips. These are the parts they're going to see. They're going to see your nostrils, what have you. But everything else is going to be covered by this hard mask. And what they don't tell you is the mask also has the head plate. And the head plate is very stiff, okay? And there's only these tiny holes for your actual hearing. So you can't hear very well in these things. And not only that, but in order to fit the costume, the mask extends past your neck and has your upper shoulders. So in order to move, you have to move your whole body in order to move your head. And if you're wearing a very heavy costume, and mind you, the costume I wore weighed about 60 pounds, and it was heavy. But the worst part about the mask was, this wasn't a mask that opened up very easily. It had a very small slit in the back. And and of course I braided my hair at the time to fit to wear it, and wore a cap and everything. This thing you could barely get your head in it. Even if you had short hair or no hair at all, you still struggled to get this thing on. You had to have 3 people help you get the mask on. And when you did, once you were in it, you found that this mask was very claustrophobic. And then the prop guys tell you, please, whatever you do, don't puke in this mask. We've had several people puke in them. They don't tell you which one, so you're going, oh God. You're smelling, all this rubber and plastic on you, and if you're being deprived of air, it becomes very difficult. And then under hot lights, and then a heavy costume. So you're struggling to breathe, and you're gonna be doing this for maybe 18 hours, maybe? Oh. It's fucking murder. And then once they turn on the hot lights, you could barely breathe, and people were close to passing out from the heat, and that just sucked the life out of you. It was very difficult working conditions. And our scene, I was in the later seasons. I want to say I was on season 5 possibly. I don't quite know the episode, but it's the episode where Commander Sheridan gives this big speech about how they're going to go to Zahadun, and they're going to go to war with the shadows, and big rousing speech. It was just fucking great. It was great to see that, and it was a wonderful opportunity to be on that show. I knew some people on the camera side. I knew the second AD. She'd worked with me on one of the first films I worked on. Her name was Krista Rose, and she it was like one of her first real big gigs at that time, and she was like a dead ringer for Tia Carrere. So they had all these posters from True Blood of her Tia Carrere holding M16s and machine guns, and they said, "Oh yeah, don't piss Krista off," and so there was that familiarity. And I had a couple friends working that day. One of them was a regular and was telling us right off the bat, it's like, try to breathe as much as you can, try to slow your breathing, because this is going to be hard, especially if they go long. And when we mean long, that means long days. So when you work on a studio set, generally 12, 13, 14 hours maybe, but if it's location set or location, you can go anywhere up to 21 hours. And the longer it is, the harder it gets, and very difficult. And so in between takes, we got to meet a lot of the stars. I had the wonderful opportunity to meet Bill Mummy and chat with him a little bit. He gets tired of me reminding him about it every time I run into him at a con. There was the late Richard Biggs, who played the Doctor. Very nice gentleman. Then there was Jerry Doyle, who was, he really didn't like being on the show, strangely. He complained. I tried to chat with him briefly, and he complained about the new uniform he had to wear. He says, I look like an outer space bellhop, and didn't like it. All he did was bitch and moan. And, we saw the lady who played Ivanova. She popped in for a hot second, but no one got a chance to really talk with her. And fortunately, neither Londo nor Andreas Katsoulos was present on set. But I did get to speak with the star of the show, played the commander. Forgive me for being short on names right now. It is kind of late here. I have to shoot late because my neighbors keep walking in on my shots, and some of them quite deliberately, and it pisses me off. But what can I do? It's like I gotta share the space. So anyway, getting back to the main scene we were going to shoot with Mira Furlan, and they have this procession of aliens, and they wanted all the aliens. I was playing Anaran. My friend Jen at the time, she was playing Anaran. She's right across from me, and we were doing this for hours. Mira Furlan and Bill Mummy would be walking up this way, and as Sheridan's giving this big speech, and really exciting scene. But we were just like, oh God, this is getting exhausting. God damn, you know. And in between takes, they ripped the mask off, and it was like they often didn't tell you they were gonna do it. They just came right behind you and they say mask off, and you get this. They just pull the damn thing off your head, and it was like, oh my God, they almost yanked your head when they did it. It was hard, and caught him up with the DP who made a little cameo appearance where he did this episode where he's facing an ombudsman, which is kind of like a judiciary figure, and he's suing a gray alien for his grandfather abducting his grandfather. And so I said, hey, how's your court case going with your grandfather? And he's like, oh, yeah, about that case. Yeah, it's still ongoing. We're still in litigation. He had a sense of humor about it, and got to check out the Furlan suit. That was really fucking cool. But so we're back to set. We're still doing the same scene over and over again, and as it goes, you got to get it right, And so they started doing a lot of rehearsals because they wanted to add more lines. They were doing some script rewrites. And so they stopped telling us when the film was rolling. So we're bored as fuck. And I'd see my friend Jen, and she's trying to get my attention. I'm trying to get her attention because you can't really tell with these fucking masks. Okay, they're expressionless. And here's where I make my little mark in sci-fi history. You see, we were pranksters, and we like to fuck around on set sometimes. And so, at that time, the Macarena was a big hit, and I couldn't get my friends' attention, so I just started putting my hands out there, doing this and doing the whole Macarena thing. And next thing I know, my friend Jen, she starts doing it. She starts doing it. The alien next to her starts doing it. The alien next to me starts doing it. And then it goes down the line, and then the actors are rolling by, and they're doing their lines, and we're all doing the Macarena thing, and they didn't notice. And then Bill Mummy just turns on and goes, loses his shit. And then they say cut, and we're going, oh shit. Fuck, we didn't know. And so therefore I wound up on the blooper reel. And so if you see a bunch of dancing aliens, and you particularly one darn that's kind of in the corner, that's me. Yeah, that was me. So anyway, in between all that, again, we were struggling with those masks, and it was becoming less of a paycheck and more of a severe test of endurance, and it was just fucking killing me that day. Me with my lung issues, it was nobody told me it was going to be this difficult. I probably would have passed on had I known it was going to be so hard to breathe, and I nearly blacked out a few times, and to the point where Mira Furlan started getting concerned. She started coming over and she said, "Oh, you okay? You okay?" And I said, this is just kind of hard to breathe. She said, I know. And she says, here, let me give you a hug. And I'm just like, oh my God, she was so sweet. And, I asked her later on in between takes if, when I had my mask up, but unfortunately I had that ugly makeup on, if I could take a picture with her, and she was really sweet. And she took that photo with me. Not sure I'm going to share that photo. I think I'm going to crop myself out of it because I look awful. I'm in the Narn costume, but I don't have the mask on. So the photo doesn't make much sense. So anyway, we talked for a while, and we got throughout the day, Mira became kind of our set mother. She was just checking in on all the extras and making sure that we were okay, but she kept coming back to me and talking to me, and I really took a liking to her. She was such a sweetheart. But what really got me about her was this one thing, and this is one thing that I like to share with her fans, and it was probably the most heartbreaking and heart-touching moment I'd ever witnessed on a film set. You see, I had a good friend at the time who I worked with. In fact, we went to work together that day. His name was Paul. He was from Serbia. And Mira was also from Serbia. And if you recall, during that time, the Serbian Civil War had been going on for a few years, and there were some horrible atrocities committed by the Serbian government. NATO went to war briefly and shut them down. Eventually, their leader, Slobodan Milosevic, would be taken to The Hague, or he'd die there, on charges of crimes against humanity. And there was just this moment off camera, and I saw my friend Paul come up to Mira. He says, Mira, and they'd talked in Serbian for a little bit earlier, but he said, that shit back at home. And she goes, I know. And they hugged each other. The two of them just held each other for like a whole 2 minutes, and they just cried. And I was just crying watching them, because it it was sad and yet beautiful. You know, they were, you know, they weren't ashamed of their heritage, but they were ashamed of their home country for what they were doing to other people. And I mean, they, you know, 10 years earlier, they'd hosted the Olympics in Sarajevo, and it showed all this unity and love. You know, it's like the former Yugoslav republics, and less than a few years later, they're committing mass murder, genocide, and just very the worst fighting in Europe since World War II. It was just awful to see. But to see those two, you know, two Serbians, two very nice people. I lost touch with my friend Paul. He was a good guy. I enjoyed working with him, and he never judged me. And just a good guy. You know, and Mira was just, like I said, she was just a total sweetheart. And again, the way they held each other and just cried. I mean, it was touching. And I think about it when I think about her. It's years later, and she's passed away a little too soon, I'm afraid. She was a great actress and a wonderful human being, and I'll never forget her. So Mira, if you're out there, maybe you tuned in. Still love you and mad respect for you always. Godspeed, Mira. Anyway, this has been one of my Hollywood stories. And again, please like and subscribe. Please take care of each other, like Mira and Paul did, and many others out there. You know, it shouldn't take a tragedy for people to love each other. So please do take care of each other and love each other. Love you all.